Number 10. Rogue and Iceman. One of the relationships that just didn't seem to work for many readers was the forced comic book relationship between Rogue and Iceman, which seemed to be inspired by the Fox X-Men films where the two were together. I'll admit that watching the movies I personally did not mind it, but of course in my heart of hearts Rogue and Gambit will always win out the day when it comes to both Rogue and Gambit's one true love and romance being each other. So it was very strange when the comics came to echo the films by trying to make Rogue and Iceman a thing. Because while in the movies Gambit might not be around to steal Rogue's heart, in the comics he still very much existed. Like, a lot. But instead it seemed that the Ultimate Universe had other plans that more followed in line with the Fox film franchise ships. After absorbing Gambit's powers and killing him, she ended up being able to touch people without hurting them, and so Rogue decided to touch Bobby. Because I guess that's what you do. Number 9. Richter and Wolfbane. So admittedly these two weren't really so much a problem together, it was more when they had split up and then Richter was with his close friend and recent lover Shatterstar that things got kind of weird. Although they also had a kind of weirdness that was really well written and allowed us to tackle a bunch of different real world issues within the world of the X-Factor series. So it was a good kind of weird, really. It was a good kind of weird, but it was still weird. Reign intended to rejoin X-Factor after leaving the X-Men and X-Force behind, only to find out that Richter is now with Shatterstar. And to be clear, I don't think Reign actually wanted to leave the X-Force, more she kinda got like kicked out of the X-Force. Sad. Reign returning was immensely offended by Richter having moved on, and by his gay relationship with Shatterstar. Reign actually claims that the child that she's pregnant with is Richter's, hoping to undo his gayness and win him back. The child was not Richter's of course, but was actually Harim Ari's, who had given up his life to save both Reign's and the life of their child. Eventually Richter finds out the truth about this, but in an amazing turn of events decides to still support Reign, despite the fact that she lied to him. And the two actually end up having a great heart-to-heart about just everything that's happened between them. Reign would even later team up with Shatterstar to defeat a demon following this ordeal. Like I said, it's weird, but it's good weird, because I also love that like part of the resolution is like, let's team up together and fight a demon. Yeah, that's bonding. Me and my ex's partner. I think it's so cute. Two exes coming together to be friends. Yes. Number 8. Everyone? Everyone in a relationship with everyone. Welcome to Krakoa. A more unconventional, I suppose, kind of weirdness is going on right now in Krakoa that has got a lot of people talking. People are talking about this all the time in comments online. They're like, what is going on? With this melting pot of all the X-Men and mutant history being mixed together, it seems like all relationships are kind of existing at once in a way on Krakoa right now. Relationships are not as clearly defined here. Many characters seem to be weaving in and out of multiple relationships almost seamlessly, as though we are kind of welcoming in an age of polyamory, which I guess makes sense considering one of the guiding laws or principles on Krakoa is to make more mutants. How do you do that? Well, when a mutant and another mutant fall in love. An example of this is what we are seeing in the summer house, where everyone has their own room, but you may have noticed that Wolverine is also bunkering down with the Summers. Jean's room in the house is actually situated between both Wolverine and Cyclops's, and both Logan and Scott also seem to be getting along better than ever, as though the love triangle has evolved to some kind of throuple, which I'm super into, I gotta be honest. But yeah, you should definitely check out, you gotta check out these blueprints, because you can see it. It's like Jean and then like Wolverine and Cyclops on either end of her rooms. And of course this is only one of many different examples that are out there in the comics right now. I personally find it refreshing to see these types of less mainstream but very much real world sorts of relationships getting some love in literature, and especially with very mainstream publishers like Marvel, because yeah, I feel like we don't see that as often. So is it weird really, or is it just great? I want to say it's just great. That's my opinion. But you can let me know your opinion in the comments, because that's also, I like other people's opinions, whether or not they match my own. Let's all share opinions and be friends. You know what I mean? Number 7. Pyro and Jean Grey. In issue 9 of Marauders, this ship happens between St. John Allardyce's Pyro and Jean Grey's Marvel Girl. Of course, no need to panic about how or why this happened, as in actuality, it's not real. I'm not sure if it was Pyro himself who came up with the idea of Jean and him being shipped in this telepathic illusion, or if it was Emma, but I feel like since Emma Frost's the one creating it for Yellow Jacket with the help of the Stepford Cuckoos, it's likely that she is the one who decided to ship the two together. I also see her being like, who do I want to ship Pyro with? Jean, because I hate Jean. No, I don't know. They love each other now. They hate each other. I don't know what's going on. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list as much as I am loving bringing it to you, please be sure to reciprocate the love by giving this video a thumbs up. And I'm sending love back out to you right now, so thank you for doing that. Number 6. Cypher and Bay. Technically both of these two are mutants, but their relationship developed kind of suddenly, which is what makes it so weird and also so great. Once again though, this is another kind of charming and endearing weird relationship. Really, I just love weird things, I think, so I think many of them are charming and endearing to me. Most of them are. These two met during the Otherworld tournament in the Ten of Swords event, and their challenge where they faced off against each other was to get married? If you like me love weird stuff, by the way, and if you haven't checked out Ten of Swords yet, you need to do that. It is so amazingly weird. You gotta read it, it's so good. Both Cypher and Bay did end up following through with this challenge, both gaining points for their team. And since then, this arranged marriage between the Krakoan mutant and a Rocco mutant has stuck. Hey, if it works, it works. Number 5. Magic and the Death Commandos. So this is less of a full-blown relationship and more of a weird tactical move of Magic's in combat, but it caught me so off guard and made me laugh so hard when I read it that I thought I needed to share it with you, so here we go. Also, anything that allows me to celebrate the awesome mutant series we have going on currently makes me really happy, so I'm happy to bring it to you. New Mutants being one of those series. Here, Magic and the team are facing off against Sybil and the Shi'ar Death Commandos, a group of hired muscle basically. At one point, Magic confronts the team of Death Commandos in issue number 5 of the newest New Mutants run, volume 4, that started in 2019. She asks them if any of them want to make out, and when they reveal that they either aren't interested or they're too busy working to accept her offer, she tells them they made the wrong choice. Apparently, if they had agreed, then Magic would have been cool defeating them with love, but in this case, they'll be dealing with Magic and her soul sword instead. Yeah, they definitely made a bad choice. And fortunately, none of them happen to be human, which means that Magic doesn't have to worry about not killing them as per Krakoa's rules. Some very bad news for the Death Commandos. Number 4. Angel and Psylocke. These two had some super intense weirdness show up in their relationship, and it all went down when Angel as Archangel became the new Apocalypse. Psylocke was his love at the time, and against her will he managed to brainwash her into becoming his bride, despite the fact that he was already with Pestilence, who was also his baby mama. He was like, I'm with you, Pestilence, but I feel like I need another bride, you know what I mean? All the brides gather round, says Angel. You might think, well, hey, that's pretty awful and weird, but guess what? It only gets weirder. Psylocke was freed of Archangel's / New Apocalypse's control and attempted to appeal to him, to make him remember the goodness inside of him and revert him back to the hero he was. However, when this failed, she was forced to kill him. Angel, however, didn't die permanently though, but instead was resurrected into a new version of himself, becoming Angel once more. This new version of Angel was a complete refresh of the character, with all of Warren's past memories being lost to him, including the memories about him and Psylocke being in a relationship. His appearance was also back to his original look, except for some reason he still had his techno-organic wings. Because I guess techno-organic wings are way cooler than organic wings, but you know what's not cool? His and Psylocke's relationship, I suppose. Because they cut that part. Number 3. Mystique and Gambit. More of a moment in the comics than a full-blown couple, but still these two together were a weird time. Especially considering that Gambit is often seen as the true love of Rogue, and Mystique is, of course, Rogue's mother. Adoptive mother, but all the same. Already we got a super weird scene where a mutant student of Gambit's, known as Fox, approached him in the showers attempting to seduce him. Gambit manages, though it seems just barely, to resist her charms, and this is already awkward enough as this is a student-teacher relationship, so but it's made even weirder when we later learn that Mystique had actually infiltrated the Xavier school under the guise of Fox, who was never really a true student as this was just a disguise devised by Mystique. Mystique later claims to have done this in an attempt to protect her daughter against Gambit, whom she didn't think was good enough for her daughter, but I gotta be honest, trying to seduce your daughter's partner seems like a really weird way at attempting to protect them. No wonder Rogue is always getting mad at her adoptive mama Mystique for meddling. She's like, this is weird, Mystique, don't meddle this way. This is not a normal mom thing. Stop it. Number 2. Nightcrawler and Amanda Sefton. So this is a weird one, because before Amanda Sefton was known as Amanda Sefton, she was Jermaine Zardos, the daughter of Nightcrawler, admittedly his adopted sister, as Nightcrawler of course was not born into the Zardos family, but was merely taken in and raised by them. But still, it's pretty weird, they're still siblings. Even weirder, Jermaine had apparently always been in love with her brother, but when he was accused of murdering their other brother, Stefan, Jermaine refused to accept that Kurt had done so in cold blood, and sought him out to find out what was really going on. In truth, Kurt had actually killed Stefan, but only because Stefan had, at an earlier time, made Kurt promise to do so if he ever became too dangerous, which was what happened. Jermaine disguised herself as Amanda and did her best to make sure no one would recognize her, not even her brother Kurt, who grew up with her. This plan miraculously worked, and Amanda began to investigate and also date her brother. Oh my. What's going on? Number 1. Juggernaut and SheHulk. Juggernaut isn't a mutant, and is usually more often thought of as an X-Men villain, but he has also teamed up with the X-Men from time to time, even sometimes seeing eye to eye with his stepbrother Charles Xavier, though usually that's not the case. SheHulk, however, is not a member of the X-Men, nor has she ever been, and is not a mutant, but she is an acclaimed hero, which is one of the things that makes this relationship so weird. Well, that and the fact that it was a super random hookup. It all went down in Uncanny X-Men issue number 435 when SheHulk was representing Juggernaut in the court of law. The ship was considered so abhorrent that years later SheHulk actually denied that it ever happened. In the 2005 SheHulk series in issue 21, it was claimed that an alternate version of SheHulk from Earth 721, who had been on vacation and impersonating her 616 counterpart, was actually the one who did the deed. And SheHulk stands by that to this day. She's like, it wasn't me, it was an alternate version of me. I would never do that. But people are like, what's the real story, SheHulk? What really happened? I believe her. I believe SheHulk. She would admit to it if she did it. That's what I think. Number 10. Kitty Pryde and StarLord. This is one of those relationships where there was really no reason for these two to be together. Really. It's just so random. StarLord is cosmic, Kitty is an X-Men. I'm not saying the X-Men never go to space, because they definitely do go to space a lot, but it seems like these two only got together because they happened to meet one another in space once. Then they began a long distance relationship. From there things got more serious and eventually ended up with Kitty joining the Guardians, accepting StarLord's marriage proposal, but later deciding her and Peter just weren't meant to be because, well, he couldn't prioritize their relationship while also ruling Spartax. Which I get it, when you're ruling a world, it's probably hard to have a relationship, but I don't know, maybe like let your partner like help you with it? I don't know. Me trying to give relationship advice to superheroes. Number 9. Bishop and Deathbird. I mean, this was mostly just a weird relationship. What do these two characters have in common? Not much. Their relationship was pretty much constantly strained because they rarely ever agreed with anything, and also because Bishop is a hero and Deathbird is a villain, they would even fight against one another during the course of their relationship. Overall, it just seems odd that they tried so hard to make this work when it was obviously never going to. The one thing I will say that was cool that came out of these two being together is that there's an alternate reality where they actually stay together and they have a daughter, Aaliyah Bishop, who is pretty cool, unique, cosmic based, and overall is a badass character. So yeah, I like her. So there's a bit of a silver lining here, as with most weird, but not all weird couples. At least we got a silver lining, so that's nice. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show it by clicking like, subscribing, commenting, doing all the things. Also, if you love X-Men as much as I love X-Men, we got a playlist for that, so check it out. Number 8. Cyclops and Emma Frost. So actually, over the course of working on this channel, I have come to love and respect the relationship between Cyclops and Emma. I think I actually, over time, have just come to love and respect Emma more as a character. It's like the more I read about her and get to know her, the more I love her. Remember way back when I started on this channel and I said I could only imagine Cyclops with Jean? Nah, those days are gone. I have changed since then. But what is weird about these two together is when Emma kind of cosplayed as Jean and then had an affair with Cyclops in his mind. That was a pretty strange moment in their relationship, made only more weird by Jean psychically walking in on them. Like, imagine walking in on your partner to find them cheating on you with someone who is dressed up just like you. That would be an experience, right? Especially if you walked in on them in their mind. It's a lot. Although I'd also be like, why are you in my mind? This is an invasion of my mind privacy. Number 7. Bloke and his unnamed boyfriend. While there are lots of people that come to mind when we first talk about Marvel's first gay relationships and intimate moments in the comics, the very first gay kiss, I believe, came actually in 2001, but it's a little disappointing. Bloke is a new member of the X-Force who just happens to be gay. We meet him first in issue 117 of X-Force, and in issue 118 we get to see him with his boyfriend, but in the same issue he also ends up dead. So, making it pretty weird that this is where Marvel chose to introduce a gay couple. I guess for some this might be seen as kind of cool because there wasn't really any showboating with Bloke's sexual identity. He was gay, but then he didn't make a big deal out of it, and it wasn't made a big deal out of in the comic. But on the other hand, introducing a gay character only to kill him shortly after revealing that he's gay, that's kind of a weird choice. However, you do have to give credit to Peter Milligan for even putting this in the comic and then for continuously showcasing gay characters in his work. So this wouldn't be the last gay couple that we'd see in X-Force, and likely actually pave the way for making those more long-lasting characters and relationships in comics possible. So it's weird, but it's also not weird. You know what I mean? Number 6. Storm and Quicksilver. Say what? When did this happen? Or more importantly, where did this happen? This is a relationship that comes to us from the universe of Earth 295, also referred to as the Age of Apocalypse. Storm and Quicksilver might sound like the weirdest couple ever on paper, but you have to remember that both characters were different in this universe. Quicksilver was much less of a brat here, as in Age of Apocalypse he lost his sister quite early on, and this was also a much more apocalyptic type reality, which meant more was demanded of him. Storm was still her badass self though. I don't think there's a reality that exists where Storm is not a badass. Number 5. Rogue and Sentry. This one is only half of an X couple, but it's so bizarre I had to bring it up, so you're welcome. Back when Sentry was retconned into existence, it was also heavily implied that he was Rogue's first. And all because he was the only one who could touch her. I have so many questions. And I also feel like we need to stop putting Rogue in relationships with people simply because they can touch her. Physical intimacy does not a relationship make. I know that it's probably been hard for Rogue not being able to touch those that she loves, but that shouldn't mean that she falls in love with someone just because she can touch them and they can touch her, right? Which is definitely what is implied happened here when the subject is brought up during Sentry's funeral and she runs off in tears. Poor Rogue. For so many reasons, poor Rogue. Number 4. Husk and Angel. Husk and Angel are a couple that I have a lot of feelings about. The weirdest part of this relationship that most people point to is the age difference and the difference in experience between the two. Warren is a full-on adult and one of the original X-Men members. In other words, he's older. Whereas Husk is a teenager. I think she was just 19 or 18, so technically an adult but still pretty young. Still a teenager, so like an adult but a teenager. Young adult. There's also the fact that Husk was this weird rebound for Angel where he claimed he was going to love her forever, but it didn't really last past Chuck Austin's run, and it's never really come up since, I don't think. He had just gotten out of a lengthy relationship with Betsy Braddock, who was going by Psylocke at the time. It was just an awkward relationship, and if you don't believe me, take a look at the time Husk and Angel made up after an argument by getting intimate in the sky above Paige's mom and the X-Men. Yikes. That was a thing that happened. Number 3. Stacy X and Angel. And if you thought Paige and Warren were weird, I have one that's even a little bit weirder perhaps. Stacy X is a mutant who can affect the way you feel, making you nauseous, dizzy, or even really good, using pheromones. She worked for a time at a brothel using her mutant powers. That brothel got attacked by an anti-mutant group and burnt to the ground, so Stacy X reluctantly at first decided to join up with the X-Men, who would help to confront the group that targeted her workplace. She ended up developing a pretty epic crush on Angel, to the point that although she knew he was already taken, she sent him a video of her jumping rope naked. This never really led to a full-on relationship, but it's so wild I had to include it. Also, apparently this is a thing that people do. People on Twitter told me this is a thing that people do. I'm not sure if I fully believe it, but apparently it happens. Also, I love Stacy X, but she is so weird. Who sends someone a video of them jumping rope naked? This is a real thing? This is a real thing? What's happening with the world? What are we doing with our lives? Stacy X must have some amazing inner confidence and self-esteem, and anyone that's done that to send those videos. I love that confidence, I will say. Love yourself, love your body. Jump rope naked. I don't know. What are the takeaways from this list? Number 2, Madeline, Pryor, and Cyclops. I mean, I have to talk about this one. I have to talk about it. I don't have a choice. Madeline Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister so that he could engineer the perfect mutant offspring, or just the perfect mutant if you will, after Jean's apparent death. Cyclops would meet Maddie and fall in love with her because, well, she reminded him of Jean, probably, although for some reason no one ever thought this was super suspicious or weird that she was a one-for-one copy of Jean. Just a coincidence, they thought. Nothing to worry about, they thought. Well, turns out it was something to worry about when Jean Grey reappeared after Scott and Maddie had their first child together and were married, and Cyclops decided to leave his family to go adventuring with his fellow mutants once more. This ended up driving Maddie crazy, unlocking her true psionic potential and causing her to make a deal with demons. Because that's what happens when someone leaves you. She would go on to have an affair with Scott's brother Havoc and become a frightening mutant-based supervillain. So, not your typical fairy tale ending for these two. Number 1, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And if you want to get into more awful stuff from the universe from whence this relationship came, be sure to check out Worst Things from the Marvel Ultimate Universe. That's a series of videos we did, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happened. I got a lot more things to share with you. Yes, on the Earth of 1610, also known as the Ultimate Reality, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were a couple. And yes, they were still brother and sister. And it could be possible in this reality that Wolverine, who saw them getting intimate together, was even their father. It was probably still Magneto though, but it definitely doesn't make any of this better. It doesn't make it better. I mean, I don't know what you could do to make this relationship better. Either just don't have it happen at all, or have these two not be brother and sister. Or at least make it so they didn't know that they were brother and sister and this was some kind of awful twisted mistake. That might help, but no, they knew. They were into it. People joked about it, and then it was confirmed as being a thing in the Ultimate Comics. On behalf of 1610, I'm very sorry about that.
Starting us off in at number 10, Wasp. Let's begin our list with one of the stranger hookups that we'll be discussing today. Wasp and Magneto. Yup, that's a thing that happened. This went down in Secret Wars issue 3, the first Secret Wars, and it was only a one-night stand, but it is kinda creepy. Magneto makes a move on her and Janet is all like, wait, what? And then says no 3 times before he whips this trick out on her. I quote, "There was so little time, Janet," while practically rubbing his face up against hers. And then she eventually gives in by saying, "Oh, why not?" and then compliments his eyes. The whole thing is a little melodramatic, and needless to say, we're pretty okay with the fact that it didn't exceed that one-night stand. In at number 9, Crystal. Inhuman Princess Crystal and mutant speedster Quicksilver fell in love after she nurtured him back to health post-Sentinel attack. Now, this is when Quicksilver was still technically a mutant. He's a human mutate now after a retcon, but it counts. So the two got married and had a kid named Luna. Their wedding happened in Avengers issue 127 but was interrupted by Ultron, and then the two eventually officially tied the knot in Fantastic Four issue 150. The relationship went downhill from there though. Crystal cheated on him, and Quicksilver, who has a real bad temper, got abusive with her. He even shouted at her, I quote, "You and humans are nothing but a cult. You never had any room in your isolated world for a mutant," all while painfully gripping her wrist while she exclaims to him that he's hurting her. Dude, chill. The hell, man. Moving on to number 8, SheHulk. So this number is kind of cheating because it involves Juggernaut, and he's not technically a mutant despite being Charles Xavier's stepbrother and also a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But this hookup is kind of the hookup of all hookups when it comes to comic books, so we decided to include it on our list and give Kane Marco an honorary mutant status for it. Talking SheHulk and Juggernaut, guys! For starters, Jennifer Walters gets way too much slack for being promiscuous. Iron Man Tony Stark is also a major hoe and doesn't get nearly as much heat, which is something that was actually brought up in the comics when those two hooked up. Anyway, we're not here to talk about SheHulk's other hookups, but rather her hookup with a particular, not actually a mutant, that made shockwaves, possibly literally too, after it happened. Look at that bedroom damage! God! I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, those repairs do not look cheap. Anyway, that is a hookup, or at least a superhero hookup. This went down in Juggernaut issue 2. Now all these days this hookup has been kind of retconned. It was an alternate reality version of SheHulk. It's still one that has managed to remain in our collective memories. Just why it gets a spot on this list too. Moving on to number 7, Spider-Man. While Peter Parker's most iconic romantic pairings are Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, the character has dated outside of the human race too. Once upon a time, Parker dated Meru, aka Sarah Rushman, a mutant capable of growing skeletal structures structures outside of her body. Essentially, bones would painfully erect themselves outside of her skin, which she could use as a weapon, body armor, shields, you name it. Meru had an awkward story arc where she was brainwashed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and believed that she was a student at Empire State University. There, she developed a crush on Parker, who was working there as a lecturer. Eventually, she discovered that he was Spider-Man, and the relationship fell apart after a few dates, with Meru eventually being rid of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s influence. Well, that was not really a good time for Meru in general. Up next at 6, Black Panther. Black Panther and Mutant Storm have had one of the most iconic and endearing relationships in Marvel's panels. T'Challa and Ororo have had a long-winded history together. They've been into each other since they were kids, and carried affection around in their hearts for one another for years and years. Then back in 2006, they actually tied the knot in a wedding that interrupted and paused the Civil War. Eventually, despite their chemistry together, T'Challa annulled their marriage because he felt that Storm had betrayed him by siding with the X-Men during AVX, so. In at number 5, Namor. Namor has hooked up with a mutant before, and that mutant's name is Emma Frost. I mean, I kinda get it, he's attractive in that whole arrogant King of Atlantis way, right? Maybe? Despite him looking like an aging genie going through a midlife crisis the first time that we're led to assume that they met, the two had a previous history together, when Namor had been invited to the Hellfire Club by Sebastian Shaw. Namor was not interested in the Hellfire Club though. He sure as hell was interested in Emma. She seduced him, and after the fact, Shaw had their hookup wiped from Emma's memory. The sexual chemistry between the two has been palpable ever since. Speaking of Emma Frost though, that brings us to our next number. In at number 4, Iron Man. Yes, Iron Man and Emma Frost. Of course Tony Stark has hooked up with at least one mutant, and of course it was Emma Frost. The two of them are undoubtedly tens, and I think we'd be insulted if they hadn't have hooked up in the past. While unfortunately we never got to see that hookup happen on panel, it is referred to in Civil War issue 3 while Tony visits Emma in Westchester. Tony asks her, I quote, "Does Cyclops know about that little arrangement we used to have when neither of us were dating?" To which Emma responds, "Cyclops knows everything, Tony. He can't keep secrets from my telepathic mind, so it's only fair that I don't keep anything from him." Friends with benefits, people. Moving on. In at number 3, Hulkling. Young Avengers Hulkling Teddy Altman and Wiccan Billy Kaplan are one of the best teen couples in comics currently, or young adult rather. Hulkling is a Kree-Skrull hybrid and Wiccan is a mutant and a mage. The latter is the reincarnated son of Scarlet Witch and the former is the son of the original Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell. Now Teddy's heritage is a bit clearer. The source of Billy's powers though are a bit unclear despite his powers being triggered when Scarlet Witch healed him. Now it is presumed he is a mutant. Despite this, the relationship between the two is pretty darn wonderful. Teddy and Billy have managed to make it through thick and thin and have become a fan favorite ship to a larger audience than just LGBTQ readers. They're also engaged, so that's exciting, and have a really sweet apartment in downtown Manhattan. Like, how dope is that? Moving on to number 2, StarLord. While Colossus might be endgame for Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat had a pretty intense relationship with Peter Quill aka StarLord not too long ago. One of the more recent memorable pairings, the two met after Kitty found herself in space when the young time-displaced version of Jean Grey had been put on trial by the Shi'ar Empire. It started as a long-distance relationship, but eventually she joined the Guardians of the Galaxy and he proposed to her. Many people adored them for how real and relatable the romance felt, but unfortunately it did not last, with Kitty calling off the engagement and the relationship itself after the events of Civil War II. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Squirrel Girl. In New Avengers Volume 2 Issue 7, Squirrel Girl Doreen Green becomes the nanny for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's daughter, but in doing so, she comes face to face with another member of the team, a past lover of hers, Wolverine. That's where we learn that the two had a previous romantic rendezvous. They awkwardly compliment each other on how good they both look, and then there's a bit of a sparring match between them where Wolverine gets his butt handed to him. No claws involved in the sparring, might I add though. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for those of you less curious, that is all we learned about their romantic past together. I mean, can you blame us for being curious? Like,
Number 10, Loki. While these two never fully end up together, Loki does consider that Storm might make a great queen to stand by his side as he rules Asgard. He tricks her into joining his guard by giving her Stormcaster and restoring her powers, making her the new Goddess of Thunder. That's one way to woo a lady. Make her the Goddess of Thunder. She'll never be able to resist. In other words, he's making her into someone who can rival his brother Thor. Storm almost fully joins Loki, but ultimately rejects him after discovering that something is amiss and that she's probably been manipulated. In the end, she joins her fellow X-Men to take him down. Storm really doesn't like being manipulated, but then again, who does? However, I would still love to see a world where these two consensually end up together. Is it weird that I think they make a cute couple? Minus the trickery, of course. No tricks. No. Number 9. Archon. In Volume 1 of Uncanny X-Men Annual, issue number 5, Storm finds herself offered a queendom, as she so often is, when she crosses paths with Archon the Magnificent, the Empyrean of the Warlords, a ruler. For those who hardcore ship Thor and Storm together, this also might be a relationship that you can get behind. The two fall for one another while fighting side by side, but decide to call it quits and go their separate ways because of their own individual obligations. For Archon to his kingdom and his people, and for Storm to the X-Men and her teammates. Never meant to be, I guess. Number 8. Doctor Doom. I don't know why I put Doctor Doom above Archon actually, but whatever. That's what I did. When Doctor Doom and Arcade kidnap some X-Men in order to force them to visit Murder World, Arcade's twisted amusement park, Doctor Doom decides to use the opportunity to have a dinner date with Storm. Very sneaky Doctor Doom. The crazy thing is that sparks seem to be flying between the two. I mean, Doctor Doom is pretty smooth and powerful, and he is the well-loved leader of an entire nation, Latveria, so I kinda get it. And he's confident as heck, which seems to be a thing that Storm is often attracted to. However, this romance quickly comes to an end after Doom makes it known that he is also willing to kill Aurora, inciting her wrath after he encases her in chrome to create basically a living Storm statue and spare her the ravages of age. Too cruel. Number 7. Thor. What? When did this happen? In the comic Marvel Now What, we get these short little stories, and one such story imagines a universe where Storm and Thor end up together, reasoning that their parallel control over lightning should make them the perfect match. We see their wedding and what their arguments would be like. I can't imagine things would go smoothly during any Avengers vs. X-Men events, but other than that, I agree with the comic that poses they might just end up being the cutest comic book couple to ever exist, should they forge a romantic relationship in the main continuity of Earth 616. Too cute for us to handle. They got little Christmas sweaters on their lightning bolts. So cute. Number 6. Yukio. Yukio is an expert combatant and longtime friend of both Wolverine and Storm. In fact, Storm met Yukio through Wolverine, and Yukio even raised Wolverine's daughter Amiko, as though she were her own, for Logan, becoming her adoptive mother. Though Storm and Yukio's relationship has never really been, confirmed in the comics, it's definitely implied. The two flirt quite a bit, and who's to say what could be happening off panel between the two powerful women? I'm thinking it's some sexy stuff though. Sexy. Yukio is actually the reason we got one of Storm's most iconic looks, her punk-inspired look with her awesome mohawk, but although the two have had some fun together, Yukio has never been quite the right fit for Storm. The danger that Yukio brings with her is tantalizing to Storm, invoking the nostalgia of her past life as a thief, but ultimately her responsibility as an X-Men often causes distance between the two, though they have stayed fast friends, often resurfacing in one another's lives every now and again. They're so cute together. Number 5. Quicksilver. These two never really got the full opportunity to explore their romance in the Age of Apocalypse reality, as it was fairly bleak and we are led to believe that they both died in battle. But during this story arc, we got to see some behind the scenes into their feelings for one another through their thought bubbles. Yay, thought bubbles. There are a few touches and words here and there passed between the two as well that imply there's likely so much more going on off panel. And this version of Quicksilver appears to be a pretty good fit for Aurora. He's much more serious and determined after the death of his sister Wanda, and he also has a closer relationship to his dad Magneto, because this is back in the 90s, before that whole family tree for the Maximoff twins was retconned. Bring them back! I want them to be Magneto's kids! Don't retcon that, it was so good. Marvel, why? Number 4. Beast. This relationship comes to us from the alternate Marvel Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. The two dated for a while, but their relationship was cut short by Beast dying, a strange recurring thing in Storm's romantic life. A lot of the people she dates end up dead for some reason. I guess because that's the only way writers can think of a relationship with Storm would actually end, because she's ultimately so cool, like why would you ever break up with her? But if you're dating her, just maybe be like extra careful in battle, just in case. Beast's death inspired her punk rock look in this universe, and she ended up turning turning to Wolverine for comfort. However, when Beast returned from the dead, Storm was quick to drop Logan in favor of rekindling her romance with Hank, who it turned out had his death forcibly faked by Professor X and Nick Fury. It was weird, but overall kind of a sweet romance. Number 3. Forge. These two fell for one another after Forge nursed Storm back to health after she was depowered. Aww. Storm, however, would later discover that Forge was actually responsible for her accidental depowering, causing her to get quite cross with him and putting a rift between the two. And understandably so. I wouldn't be happy if someone depowered me either, accident or no. She later sought Forge out again, looking for help having her powers restored, but once the two found one another, they ended up being trapped in an alternate dimension. Wah wah wah. They were stuck there for a year, granting them time to make peace and make out, falling back in love with one another. Forge managed to give Aurora back her powers by deconstructing his cybernetic leg and using the components to build a device that allowed him to restore them. Comics, am I right? Storm then used her powers to return them to her own dimension. Unfortunately, Forge's own insecurities ended up causing the two to split. Forge had proposed to Storm, but because she hesitated momentarily, he rescinded his marriage proposal. He did not even wait for her to answer, assuming she couldn't possibly truly love him. How dare you hesitate? I feel like you have to be very confident to be with Storm. You really have to know your own worth. Come on, know your own worth, Forge. She loved you. She loved you. Coulda had Storm. Number 2. Wolverine. Aurora ended up with Wolverine after her breakup with Black Panther. While Logan and Aurora had worked together for years before this, their relationship was generally viewed as a strong platonic one. But upon her separation from T'Challa and returning to the X-Men, things started to heat up between her and Logan. The relationship actually looked like it was gearing up to be one of the best ones either had ever had so far. So of course, the comics had to find some way to ruin these two X-Men's happiness by killing off Wolverine. I know, so tragic. Leaving Storm behind to mourn him. Even before these two ended up together in the comics, we also saw them together in the animated 90s cartoon. Well, an alternate version of the main characters, but still, it happened. Number 1. Black Panther. These two met when they were very young. Storm saved the young prince and a romance blossomed between the two, but T'Challa's responsibilities would take him away from his love Storm until much later. As adults, they found one another and fell back in love again. The two were even married, and Storm became the Queen of Wakanda. Unfortunately, while they made a great couple and stood united through many conflicts, including the first Civil War, they eventually split. During the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, Black Panther named the mutants enemies after Wakanda suffered an attack from Namor. T'Challa accused Aurora of abandoning her people when she chose to side with the X-Men, and this caused a huge split between the two.